welcome to Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be talking about sports in general as one of Egypt's pillars of human development. As we all know that Egypt's national football team has claimed the spotlight and the headlines after its historic breakthrough of AFCON 2022. Not only it was praised by the international press, but also their strong performance was appreciated by the political leadership and the government and by everybody. No doubt that sports is not about winning, but it's about building a stronger and a healthier, also a happier and a safer personality and community at large. Because New Egypt is attaching maximum importance and attention to sports and to building the Egyptian citizen on more than one level, the New Republic believes that sports is one of the main pillars for the community development. And throughout this episode, we'll be reading more about the heroic performance of the Egyptian national team. And we are going also to talk about how the state is believing in investing in the human capital, which is integral to the overall developmental process of the country. Tonight, and after reading the main top stories that has happened throughout the day, we'll be having all the honor and pleasure of having Major General Ahmed Nasser, the president of the Association of the African Sports Confederations, and with him we'll be reading more than one important story in the headline in the sports field. But first of all, let's read more concerning the top stories of the day. Judge Boulis Fahmi Iskandar was sworn in on Wednesday as the head of the Supreme Constitutional Court before President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, according to presidential spokesperson, Ambassador Bassam Radi. The president expressed his profound appreciation for the Supreme Constitutional Court's lofty role in the Egyptian judiciary. On his part, the head of state had wished the new head of the Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt success in making efforts with devotion in order to protect justice and also to implement the law. Noteworthy that Judge Iskandar, who will start his 4-year tenure as of today, has served as the vice president of the Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt. That was back in 2010, and then as president of the Cairo Appeal Court until he was reappointed as the vice president of the Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt back in 2014. Another top story of the day, and both Egypt and Algeria are moving closer, according to presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi. President Sisi received a phone call from the president of Algeria, Abdelmajid Tebboune, on Wednesday, where they discussed the recent developments of Libya, along with the regional and global issues of mutual interest. The Algerian president expressed his sincere appreciation for the warm reception and hospitality that he received during his recent visit to Egypt. Tebboune had stressed that Algeria shares with Egypt firm and outstanding bonds at the official and popular levels and is keen on holding intensive cooperation and bilateral coordination in all areas, notably in the economic and the security fields. On his part, the president had valued the visit by his brother, the Algerian president, as a dear guest of the country, underscoring the outstanding and fraternal relations between Egypt and Algeria. Always very important to read the news, and always adding value, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Mohamed Hegazy, former assistant to the foreign minister. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. And as we always say, forward ever Egypt and Algeria, and both heads of state had seen earlier in the day eye to eye, and a recap of the important visit that President Tebboune of Algeria had paid to Egypt recently. Ambassador.
Yes, Taghreed, I do subscribe to all what you have said about the importance of the relations between Egypt and Algeria, the frequency of the call to cement what has been agreed upon in the very important and historical visit last week by President Tebboune to Egypt. requires further talks, requires comparing notes, and I'm sure that this call fall into the attempts of both leaders to bring together the Arab unity, particularly the situation in Libya that has been particularly emphasized during the talk, where both have asserted the need to enhance the presence of the institutional buildings in the Libyan scenery and the importance of the statehood in Libya, where both leaders have committed themselves to support the Libyan leadership further to avoid the rule and to declare Libya for Libyans away from the interventions of regional powers like Turkey or the interventions of the militia in hijacking the political scenery, and to allow the Libyan leadership to come together to terms so that they can forge ahead with the political development that they are planning for. The most important also is that both Cairo and Algiers are the blocks that can help both Libya and even Tunisia, where President Kais Saied needs diplomatic support, and no one able to do that than the neighboring countries of the size of Algeria and Libya. Of course, on the bilateral level, both leaders have examined the outcome of the historic visit of President Majid Tebboune to Cairo lately. At the same time, they have referred to the joint commission between the two countries. As you know, Tahrir, both economies are stable, and they can render to each other more investments and more economic cooperation that will be beneficial to both people. The most important also that the role of the Algerian diplomacy on the African scene is an asset to Egypt as well. Both countries have played a very instrumental role, as we all know, in the abstention or in the cancellation of the African Union granting Israel the observer status. Both countries have played a role where Israel has to feel that unless there is a solution to the Palestinian cause, no normalization should happen, particularly in the African scene, where Africans have suffered from the apartheid, where an important report of the UN and the human rights organizations condemned Israel of being an apartheid state. So there is no point that they can adhere to this important status in the African Union unless they commit themselves to international legality and build up towards the two-state solution.
Definitely, Ambassador. And we have seen also how the people-to-people relations also are featuring high cultural relations, the soft power. And we've seen how during the AFCON tournament and the champions, AFCON 2022, how in Algeria they were very much supportive the matches that, especially the matches that Egypt played in 2022 AFCON Games.
This is another aspect of the historical relations. As you know, Tahrir, Egypt endured a lot of sufferings to support the Algerian revolution. Nasser have committed himself to support the Algerian revolution, and that costed him the tripartite aggression that happened in 1956 because of his support to the Algerian revolution. And after that, relations went to a height that needs to be supported and restored. I have to say that the economic balance of trade need to be doubled, the investment level, because Algeria is a huge economy, a stable economy, a huge country with a stable armed forces and a wise leadership and a diplomacy that can be an asset to the Arab League Summit Conference that is coming to Africa, where we all opting to work hands in hand, confront challenges. So I'm sure that the Algerian diplomacy, with all its influence and respect in the African continent is an add value and an asset to the Egyptian role in Africa. Besides that, we can together help our brothers in North Africa, particularly Libya, to come out of this disarray and to arrange their work together on the military and the political level, so that the political solution to the Libyan situation can be supported by regional neighboring countries like Egypt, Tunisia, and Algeria. Besides, Egypt and Algeria can also support diplomatically and politically and economically the situation of President Kais Saied, who is now in a situation where the support of neighboring countries are fundamental. I'm sure that now, when Egypt and Algeria are working together, Arabs are stronger. And the Arab Summit Conference that is supposed to be happening in Algeria soon needs further consultations. And the call of today lie in this same vein.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Mohamed Hegazy, a former assistant to the foreign minister, always adding value. Also, reading the news of the day, a very important meeting has happened. Lieutenant General Mohamed Zaki, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, the Minister of Defense and Military Production, met with the General Kenneth Mackenzie, the Commander of the U.S. Central Command, and his accompanying delegation, which is currently visiting Egypt. The meeting dealt with a number of issues of common interest and ways of enhancing military cooperation and joint exercises between the armed forces of both countries. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces expressed his pride in the well-established relations between the armed forces of Egypt and the United States of America, and the keenness of the General Command of the Armed Forces to increase joint cooperation in the military field in a way that contributes to addressing the common challenges and laying the foundations for security and stability in the region. The Minister of Defense and Military Production, accompanied by Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, also inaugurated earlier in the day the developmental work of Tanta Military Hospital. After developing it according to the latest international medical systems, the head of the Armed Forces Logistics Authority delivered a speech in which he thanked the General Command of the Armed Forces for supporting the development and the modernization of the hospitals and the keenness to possess the latest international medical systems.